Hi and welcome to a new video on my channel. I'm Andrea and today I want to show you how to make this beautiful textured Tunisian crochet stitch pattern, for which I also have a written pattern in my shops. You can buy the PDF with all the written instructions and charts that show you exactly what I'm going to show you in this video, and also you have stitch counts there for different sizes of Tunisian crochet cowls made with chunky yarn. You can also use this stitch pattern for baby blankets or sweaters or anything else you want to create with it, because it's a very beautiful and easy to make stitch pattern once you get used to doing it. In this video I'll be demonstrating using chunky yarn and a 9mm hook, so you can get some yarn and a hook and we can get started. The pattern consists of a multiple of 8 plus 5 stitches. One of them is the last stitch, or if you count loop, then it consists of a multiple of 8 plus 6 loops on the hook at the end of the forward pass when you count the loops on the hook. I went ahead and prepared a honeycomb base with one pattern repeat, so that 12 stitches plus the last stitch. I have a separate video that shows you how to make the foundation, and then a separate video to show you how to make the honeycomb stitch, which is very useful on the edge of projects as it prevents the curling of the project. Since this is a pattern for a cowl, I will only add the honeycomb at the top and bottom, but if you're making a blanket, you should add extra stitches on the sides that will form an outer border of honeycomb, which you work on every row at the beginning and end of the row. To make this pattern, you need to be familiar with simple stitches, purl stitches, and knit stitches in Tunisian crochet. The setup row for this stitch pattern consists of knit stitches followed by Tunisian simple stitches repeated to the end of the row. So we insert the hook between the vertical bars of the first stitch to pick up a loop. This is the first knit stitch, and then a simple stitch behind the next vertical bar. Repeat this to the end of the row. At the end of the row, we insert the hook behind the two vertical bars and pick up a loop, then chain 1 and yarn over pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. This setup row is not part of the pattern, but it's necessary so that we can start working in pattern. The next two rows, which do belong to the pattern, are the same. So we have one knit stitch, one simple stitch, repeated until the end of the row. At the end of the row, as always, insert behind the two vertical bars, yarn over, pick up a loop, and then chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And then repeat this one more time. I will skip ahead. Now that the two rows are done, the next row will include the cluster stitches. I will switch to a different color so that you can see the different stitches I'm going to work into. To switch color at the beginning of a row, you can do the last yarn over pull through 2 with the new color on the return pass on the previous row, and that's a nice color change that is not seen on the side of the work. Now the stitch pattern will consist of a repeat of the following 4 stitches. One knit stitch in the first stitch, then one simple stitch, and then we make a cluster stitch by counting back 2 stitches on the hook and down 2 stitches. We don't count the current stitch or the current row that we're on, and then underneath this second stitch we insert the hook and pick up a tall loop, which we bring up to the height of the row we're working on. Then we insert the hook into the next stitch as if to make a knit stitch and drop a loop, and then we count forward 2 stitches and down 2 stitches. So we have 1, 2, and in the third we insert the hook. We yarn over, pick up a tall loop and pull it up to the height of the row we're working on, and then yarn over, pull through 3 to complete the cluster. So this is one cluster stitch, and it should not be tight, so it should not make the fabric crumble in on itself. Next we have one simple stitch, and that's the repeat. So we do this, in my case, 3 more times, in your case as many times as it's needed to reach the end of the row. I will show you again. 1 knit stitch, 1 simple stitch. Now we don't really need to count back because we go into the same stitch that we used before, and we draw up a tall loop, knit stitch in the next stitch on the row, and then go forward in the column with the knit stitches, and in the third row below draw up a tall loop, yarn over, pull through 3 stitches on the hook. Simple stitch, and that finishes the second repeat of the stitch pattern. And then one more time, knit stitch, simple stitch, cluster stitch, and now we don't have a stitch to work in here because there's no knit stitch left, so we work into the last stitch on the row. So we count 2 down, 1, 2, and in the third last stitch on this row we insert the hook, draw up a tall loop, yarn over, pull through 3, and we have 1 simple stitch left here, and then 1 last stitch behind the 2 vertical bars at the end of the row. Draw up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to return to the beginning of the row. I will switch colors again because now we are again at the beginning of a pattern repeat, and now we have 2 more rows of 1 knit stitch, 1 simple stitch, 1 knit stitch, 1 simple stitch. So we insert between the 2 vertical bars, draw up a loop. This is the first knit stitch, simple stitch. Next we do a knit stitch in the cluster, and to do that we insert the hook between the 2 vertical bars here at the top. Simple stitch, knit stitch, simple stitch, knit stitch, and so on until the end of the row. Insert the hook behind the 2 vertical bars at the end, pick up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to return to the beginning of the row. And we do this one more time. Knit stitch, simple stitch, knit stitch, simple stitch, and then do the return pass at the end of the row. I will once again change color so you can see the clusters in the next row. Now we cannot repeat what we did here because we need to complete the diamonds. So we need to start with half a cluster forward in the first stitch. To do that we start with a knit stitch in the first stitch, and then we insert the hook into this stitch here at the top of the cluster below. Draw up a tall loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 to finish the half cluster forward. Next is a simple stitch, and now we begin the pattern repeat of 4 stitches, which consists of knit stitch, simple stitch, 1 cluster, which begins here in the top of the first cluster on the previous section. Then we do a knit stitch in the next stitch on the working row, and pick up another tall loop in the top of the other cluster, and 1 simple stitch to finish the pattern repeat. We repeat this until there are 2 stitches left to do on the row. That's 1 knit stitch, 1 simple stitch, 1 cluster, and 1 simple stitch. When you have 2 stitches left, you make a knit stitch and a simple stitch. And now we need to mirror the beginning where we have this half cluster stitch. So we insert the hook into the top of the cluster below and draw up a tall loop, and then insert the hook in the last stitch as usual and draw up a loop. Then we yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook to finish this cluster, and then we do the return pass as usual by doing a chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. In this way, when we seam up the edge, there will be no missing diamond in the pattern. As you can see, now we have these diamonds here, and then when we will fold the fabric together, we will finish this diamond here. Of course, if you use just one color of yarn, it will be much easier to sew up the fabric and create the diamonds on the rest of the fabric. Now you repeat these 6 rows until you reach the desired length or height of your project, and then you continue with a band of honeycomb stitch and then bind off in pattern to have a nice mirrored top and bottom. Let me show you the first row in this honeycomb stitch pattern. So we have 1 simple stitch and 1 purl stitch, all worked as usual in these stitches as if you had simple stitches below. There is no difference in working with these clusters. So you just pick up stitches as if you were making honeycomb as usual. At the end of the row, you have the 2 vertical bars in the top part of the cluster. Draw up a loop, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to return to the beginning of the row. And that's it. You continue like this to finish up the honeycomb section. Now I will put a stitch marker in this live loop, and I will show you how to seam up this edge so that the diamonds are complete. So to seam up these 2 sides and to create an illusion of complete diamonds, I will use the longer tail that I have here. You need a tapestry needle, and first you of course seam up the honeycomb part. If you want to know how to seam up honeycomb, I have a separate video for the Tunisian crochet cowl made only in honeycomb stitch, so check out that video. So when you reach the diamonds, you want to create a stitch that will connect these 2 parts together. So you go from underneath the end of the cluster stitch, and then instead of going underneath like this, like you usually would to make a seam, you go around the other leg of the cluster stitch on the other side. And then you go back into the beginning stitch. This way, these 2 are connected and they look like they originate from the same stitch. You continue in regular stitches up until you reach the next intersection between the 2 clusters on the side. And of course, normally you would use a much longer tail than I have here. When you reach the top of the first cluster, you need to make this look as if it belongs in this stitch here. So we go below it and around. and then behind the knit stitch in the cluster and down, and then back up behind the cluster. In this way you create the illusion that this leg belongs to this cluster, and then you continue seaming up. As you can see, the seam is almost invisible. Of course, on this very short piece of fabric it's a bit complicated to show you, but the diamonds look as if they belong together and there is no seam here. This is what the seam looks like in the big project. It's not perfect, but you can barely see it here. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to, you can check out more tutorials for Tunisian crochet stitch patterns, either for lacy patterns or textured patterns like this with tall stitches on the surface of the fabric. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to know when I publish more videos, make sure to subscribe to my email updates and to the channel, as I plan on releasing more videos with interesting Tunisian crochet stitches and regular crochet patterns as well. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!